Alright guys, welcome back. This view is getting awfully familiar by now, I'm sure. But we're working on the Camaro once again, as you already know. Anybody who is unfamiliar with what I'm doing here, I'm going to post a video or a link to a video at the top of the screen kind of explaining what's going to be going on with these videos in the upcoming weeks. That list right there is everything we're going to be doing to this car. And today we're going to be tackling the wideband, which is on my shelf over here with the rest of the parts that need to go on this thing. But it's right under my eBay catch can. Now before I picked up this AEM, I had a Innovate, just like that right there, but that's the boost gauge box. An Innovate Motorsports LC2, I believe. And it worked all right, but when I had the car tuned, the tuner forgot to tie the sensor up, and basically the sensor got dragged. And with those units, if the sensor shorts out or it gets dragged or something, it just completely kills the whole entire gauge. It kills the controller, and you could replace the sensor as many times as you want. I tried 3 different sensors, but the sensor actually never pairs with the module. So that thing was pretty much done. I didn't care too much about it anyway because the interface and the way that thing connects was really, really shitty. So I went and picked up this AEM, which got great reviews off of Summit Racing. I'm going to post a link to it down in the description. This is the model and the series number right there. But this one's supposed to be really easy to connect to as far as HP tuners goes, and it actually plugs into the OBD port. So this thing plugs into the OBD. I think it gets the power and ground from there. I'm not 100% on that. We got to go through the instructions. But the way you hook into HP tuners, being this is going to be plugged into the OBD already, when you plug in your HP tuners module, it's just going to read through this dongle and then into the car. So you don't have to run a separate USB or a separate wire from the wideband to the laptop. You just plug it in like you normally would with HP tuners, and you're good to go. Your wideband is going to automatically come up in the tuning software. Let's see here. So here's our gauge. I got it all freeze dried or wrapped. I'll take care of that later. Okay, wiring. So I'm assuming this is the sensor wire. This is actually going to plug into the O2, and then this end is probably going to go into the sensor or the module for the sensor itself. Here's our wideband sensor. Yeah, so this connects into here. And here's the interesting part. All right, so it doesn't get power and ground from the OBD, which I kind of figured that because they can't just tap off of that. There's other shit running through there. But simple enough, they just give you a separate wire for power and ground. And that is it. This end goes to the gauge. The wideband part has a connector. That goes to the gauge. So those are your 2 connectors right there. And that is it. That's all you need to connect your laptop. So this just goes into the OBD port. And then you'll just come into your car, plug in your HP tuner dongle the way you normally would, and that's it. Your wideband's going to automatically read through this while it's going to the OBD. All right, so I didn't get very far. I started taking the ties off of the wiring harness, and I noticed that the power is actually, the wires are coming off the main gauge end. So what I'm going to do is cut this shorter, and I'm just going to tap the power and ground here, being it's going to be right at the back of this gauge, right into the exposed wires that I have yet to solder, where the boost gauge is getting its power. So these 2 right here, I'm just going to tap them into here, and all the connections will be right up here, and I could just run the OBD down. And in case you're wondering how much power that's going to take up, because instead of running just a wideband off that circuit, now I'm going to be running a wideband and the boost gauge / shift light. I already checked the specifications on the Innovate. That takes 2.5 amps, I think is the peak on that. The wideband, the peak current that this is going to see is 3 amps. So that's about 5.5 amps. I think in this entire car, there's only one circuit that is 5 amps, and there's nothing below that. So the way I have it wired up, I'm using the circuit for the old fuel pump, being I ran my own wires from the fuel pump directly off the battery. So that old fuel pump circuit, I think it's like a 10 amp circuit. There's like a 10 amp fuse in there. So running these 2 off of that and putting like a 7.5 amp fuse in there is going to be plenty enough, and I'm not going to have to worry about melting any wires or blowing anything out. So guys, it's time for an update. You can see I had to pull the dash cover. I pulled the dash, and I ended up switching the gauges because I kind of had this together and I slipped it in, and then I realized where the shift light was placed, I just couldn't really see anything. Half the top of the thing was blocked by the wideband, so I just switched places. I had to cut all my solder joints to move this back up here. The wideband's going to go down there. And then for the actual running the wiring, I tried getting the pillar on when the gauges were in the old spots. And all these wires here, the way I had it before, this was kind of, this was basically just passing over this. And there's too many wires in here now to do that. I feel like that's going to be a bad chafe point right on this sharp piece of metal. So I pulled the dashboard and I pulled this plastic piece of trim that kind of sits there. And I kind of made this into its own harness. I taped everything together. And I'm just going to stuff this right in here. There is plenty of room back there to fit that. And it's kind of padded so nothing's going to chafe. And I'm going to do the same with the serial cable, the wideband sensor connector, and the actual wideband power harness with the OBD, and all that can fit in there no problem. Then for actually slipping the pillar trim back on, all the wires are going to come out right underneath this, so it's actually going to be inside of the trim, so that'll overlap and sit on this without a problem. Before they were kind of like coming out through the side here, and the actual the pillar wouldn't slide over because it was pinching all those wires. All right, so it's about 2 days later. I just hopped onto the car. I got the sensor installed. Now I'm just wiring the wire from underneath the center console, and I'm running under the dash. But as you can see, I made some changes here, and I picked up these foam panels from Amazon to try to deaden the sound. I also got a different mic where I have it kind of shooting out and directly at me. So hopefully between these two things, it's going to make the sound a little bit better. I also don't have the Trans Am in here because I was driving it and I want to pull it in here. And the engine was hot and just completely killed the AC that I had going on in here. But let me know if it sounds any different. I know there's still going to be some of an echo because obviously the Trans Am isn't in here. These cost me about $50 for 50 of them. So I'm going to put a link down below if you guys want to pick them up. But I definitely like the way they look. It kind of looks like a race car, kind of checkered flag kind of thing. Matches the car pretty good. So I was reading through the instructions here to see how I have to calibrate the sensor, because usually you have to leave the sensor out in open air before you make the connection, just so we can calibrate and then you put it in the pipe. But with this sensor, it actually says with the new sensor, you should use the resistor calibration for best accuracy. So that's basically the calibration that they already have set up in there. So they do not recommend doing a free air calibration on a brand new sensor. When it ages, that's when you're going to want to do it. So I'm just going to pop that sensor in the pipe the way it is. Came in here and I just ran the wire up through the hole where the old automatic shifter cable used to go through, and I left the same grommet there. I just fished that through down there, and I'm just going to make that connection to the wire coming down from the sensor, button all this shit up, and I think we're going to be good to go. I'll pull the car out, we'll go for a little test drive and see how everything reads. Gonna hop up top and twist this wire, just pull it up, probably zip tie it up here to these other couple of wires. Alright, so we're ready to start this thing up. I got the dash back in, all the wires are zip tied up, tucked away nice and neat. I ended up having a serial adapter. I had to pick it up when I was trying to fix my old wideband, because the Innovate wideband also uses this old outdated shit. As for the wideband, I got the sensor in. I ended up taking all the extra slack from the cable and I just kind of coiled it up and stuffed it up. There was an opening right over there. But I do have my laptop here. So let's just turn the key on, make sure everything's reading the way it's supposed to. As far as the gauge, the wideband actually reading the sensor and everything. I still have to run down to AutoZone and get a vacuum plug for underneath the dash. I just put a piece of tape over for now. If I hit boost, it's probably just going to blow off. Okay, heat. So I'm assuming the sensor's heating up right now. It's probably going to go off and give us a reading once it gets hot. right, I guess that's it. I'm not sure what these buttons do yet. I have to look at the instructions. But I'm going to grab the laptop. We'll see if I can get the Innovate software loaded up there. We'll plug into this and see if we can set a shift point. Almost shit point. And see if we can set a shift point. I gotta go get the Trans Am in, because I haven't really been out all day, and it looks like it's gonna friggin' downpour out there. I got the T-tops off, trying to air the stench out, and then you can see with the, I have the newer HP tuners, the MPVI2, so the old model had just that kind of brick-like dongle that was in line to the wire, and then with that, you would come in here with your wideband wire and have to just manually kind of put the wire into that. With this wideband wire is already there, we're just plugging this in. Alright, so my rev limiter here is set to 6600, which means I'm probably going to set the shift light to come on and give me the go ahead at around 6400. Alright, so I know where I'm going to set the shift light once I download the software and figure out how to actually use it and to set it up. Right now, let's go take the car out. I'll set you guys up on the window. We'll see what the wideband's doing, and we'll see if we get the boost gauge to work. Like I said, I still have that hose kind of just plugged with tape underneath the dash, so if it hits boost, it might blow off. But I think I might just take you guys down to AutoZone, see if I can get that piece to finish that up, and we'll see if everything's working on the way there. I can already hear the vacuum leak under the dash, so we're not going to really get a boost reading. Oh wow, here comes the rain. Of course it starts raining the second, literally the second I pull this thing out of the garage. And I still didn't get a new wiper linkage yet. So of course my wipers are all floppy. And if I have them on, the right side tends to get stuck under the cowl and then they just don't work at all, or just rips the wiper blade to shreds. The wideband seems to be working good. Alright, we're good to go. We should have full vacuum now. Perfect. We have boost. So all that's left to do is get that shift light set up. And then I think we're going to move on to the blower. We'll take care of the coupler, do the belt, and change the hardware, all that stuff. But I think I'm gonna end this one here, guys. I'll see you in the next one. We're gonna be working more with this. We'll do some laptop stuff, see if we get the shift light working, and we're gonna crack into that blower. So until next time, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. If you want to grab a hoodie, link is gonna be up on that screen, and I'll see you in a few days.